Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. South Korea and China are entering a new phase in their economic relationship. The recent summit between their leaders came at a pivotal moment when global supply chains are shifting, strategic industries are under pressure, and the broader geopolitical landscape is growing more unpredictable. Both governments are signaling a renewed push for cooperation, but the challenges seem to be layered: competition in tech, pressure from the U.S., and concerns about long-term growth. With 2026 already here and Korea's recovery still uneven, today we take a closer look at what this new phase in Korea-China ties could mean for business, strategy, and stability. And for this, we connect to Jae Myung, president of China Moon Strategies LLC and former Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for China. A big welcome.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
And also joining us is Jae Myung, Associate Professor of Economics at Seogang University. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start a discussion with Mr. Moon. Of course, the latest South Korea-China summit, it brought renewed economic cooperation into focus. But could you tell us why this momentum is so significant right now, and how has the direction of bilateral ties shifted compared to previous years?
President Lee came to office promising a more pragmatic and less ideological approach toward China, and he said that his summit goal was to reset the relationship. His success in broadening economic cooperation with South Korea's largest trading partner is important. Many government and corporate MOUs were signed at the summit, but the details are really unclear, so they are difficult to assess. What we know is that Korea and China have agreed to engage each other more frequently on trade and perhaps other issues. But as far as we can tell, there's been no concrete change in China's policy regarding North Korea, maritime disputes, and the Chinese ban on Korean cultural products since 2016. Meanwhile, while the summit was underway, China threatened and then sanctioned neighboring Japan, reminding us of similar Chinese aggressive behavior toward Korea during the THAAD missile dispute. My overall assessment is that the summit boosted Korea-Chinese bilateral relations, but that there really wasn't a broad reset, and the tangible outcomes are really mostly limited to the commercial arena because the major political differences really can't be resolved anytime soon.
Of course. So we've seen some progress, but not so much of a difference from past relations. But building on that, a large business delegation accompanied President Lee in the summit, signaling strong private sector interest. So Professor Ho, what kinds of opportunities do you see opening up for Korean industries as a result of this?
A lot. So there was a discussion about the possibility that Korea-China cooperation in strategic industries such as semiconductors, batteries, electronic vehicles, and AI could shift from now it's more like a vertical specialization, but to more horizontal collaboration. The interest of individual companies in Korea are even more specific. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix operate semiconductor production bases in China, and amid the recent trend of import U.S. restriction on bringing equipment into China, so production stability and supply chain management have emerged as key issues. Hyundai Motor Group and LG Energy Solution also maintain production hubs in China. So it is likely that the two sides discussed joint responses to changes in the way they cooperate in the electronic vehicle and battery industries.
Right. So of the many agreements and understandings between the two sides, Professor Ho, which stood out the most for you, and what do you think Seoul should be prioritizing as it moves even forward?
I think all of these agendas are important, but among them, I believe the most crucial one is to secure supply chains for critical minerals. China supplies more than 90% of the world refined rare earth element, which are essential raw material for advanced industries such as semiconductors. In this context, it is significant that during the Korea-China summit, China confirmed that it is actively cooperating to ensure that Korean companies can smoothly procure critical minerals and stated that it will continue this effort going forward. Although no concrete bilateral documents have been released, it will be important for Korea to secure specific agreement from China regarding the supply chain for critical minerals in the future.
So we'll be looking forward for developments on that front. But now let's widen the lens a little bit and invite Washington to the picture. Mr. Moon, so how is the U.S. likely to view the South Korea's latest outreach to China, and how can Korean companies strike a strategic balance between U.S. expectations and Chinese market potential?
The United States wants Korea to grow its economy and prosper, but is concerned that China may exploit Korean cooperation to circumvent American trade measures and to perhaps undermine the U.S.-Korea security alliance. For example, there were references at the summit to potential cooperation on a variety of technical issues that the professor mentioned and various sensitive technologies. China has long sought to obtain access to advanced Korean technologies by both legal and illegal means. So the U.S. will be watching for hints of technology leakage or circumvention of U.S. export controls. The U.S. hopes that South Korea and other strategic partners will prioritize supply chain security over short-term commercial benefits from Beijing. Washington views excessive economic dependence on China as a potential vulnerability that could be exploited to create cracks in the U.S.-Korea alliance.
Right, then how should South Korea balance this difference of interests? Mr. Moon.
Well, I think that South Korea needs to look at both the importance of maintaining its trade relationship with its largest trading partner, but also its security interests, which are probably even more important. Those are existential. So I think that there needs to be a pragmatism going forward, evaluating opportunities versus risks and making those calculations going forward.
Right. Here's where the Lee administration's pragmatic diplomacy would come in. Now, alongside these economic themes, there's growing talk of restarting cultural and people-to-people exchanges as well. Professor Hall, from your perspective, how economically meaningful would that kind of soft power reset be for the two countries?
Yeah, although there was no official announcement lifting the Korean wave ban, 한안령 in Korean, during this summit, the two countries agreed to gradually expand cultural content exchanges, as you mentioned. So if the ban were to be fully removed, Korea would be able to freely enter China's cultural content market, which is valued at approximately more than 2,600 trillion won. So it could also help revitalize the tourism sector in Korea. The number of Chinese tourists visiting Korea, which once reached 8 million per year, was cut in half immediately after the ban was imposed. It was about 8 years ago. In this sense, lifting the ban could generate economic benefit, not only through cultural content, but also by boosting tourism from Chinese visitors to Korea, I think.
Right, so let's hope it would really gradually open again. Now, meanwhile, let's step up further to the geopolitical landscape. Lately, America's invasion of Venezuela has raised fresh risks. Given China's involvement in Venezuela's energy sector, Mr. Moon, how could this shift the dynamics in the broader rivalry with Washington?
Well, the Venezuela situation is highly volatile and thus difficult to predict. With regard to oil, for example, Venezuela really is only a minor player in world markets because it produces only about 1% of the global oil supply and only 4% of China's oil demand. But President Trump's announcement yesterday that Venezuela could deliver up to 50 million barrels to the U.S. for sale on the global market has introduced new uncertainty and driven global prices lower. This unprecedented proposal with no additional details means that almost anything is possible in Venezuela's post-Maduro oil sector. There's also the question of what international precedent the Venezuela situation sets and what broader implications there might be. Many observers have speculated that Trump's Venezuela adventure is an invitation for rogue nations around the world to take bold moves that ignore or violate longstanding international norms. But it's really too soon to tell. And that's a topic that could take us many hours to analyze. So I'll note that concern without exploring it further for the time being.
Right. That incident was really a big incident that could reshape a lot of things geopolitically. But South Korean government itself, it has said that the immediate impact on the markets of this Maduro incident will likely be limited. But Professor Ho, for the long term, over the long term, what kind of variables could we be watching as the situation unfolds?
Yeah, I agree with the South Korean government in the sense that the impact of the Venezuela situation on the financial market appears to have been limited because the U.S. military operation was carried swiftly and very effectively. So, but Venezuela's economy accounts for only about 0.11% of global GDP, which is quite small, and its stock and bond market are not strongly connected to the international financial market. However, given that Venezuela holds the world's largest oil reserve, the geopolitical risk surrounding the country could become a source of instability in the oil market. In this regard, whether the United States conduct additional large-scale military operations and whether the situation turns into a prolonged conflict are important potential variables. In the case of a full-scale war, there could also be a case that a global flight to safe asset, increasing demand for the US dollar, which in turn could put additional pressure on the $1 exchange rate, which has already been elevated quietly recently.
Right. So we'll really have to see how this incident will unfold and impact the markets moving forward. But turning to domestic markets, South Korea's Kospi recently broke the 4,600 mark, hitting a new record. Professor, what is driving this momentum?
I think the biggest driver of this upward trend is the expectation that semiconductor companies tied to the US AI rally, for example, like Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, will show very strong performance this year and next year. These two companies alone account for about 1/3 of the Kospi's total market capitalization, and their rising stock prices appear to be leading the overall increase in the index. If the Kospi rises by just about 10% more, it will reach the 5,000 level. And as expectation for corporation earning growth, security firms have recently released report suggesting that the Kospi could reach 5,000 as early as the first quarter of this year.
Wow, so we could be looking forward to a 5,000 as early as the first quarter of this year?
Yeah, that's one of the government agenda.
All right, we will be looking forward for that. Now, finally, Mr. Moon, looking ahead to the year 2026, South Korea actually faces both recovery hopes and lingering uncertainty as well. So how much will economic ties with China and supply chain shifts shape the growth outlook?
I think that economic cooperation with both China and the United States will play a key role in Korea's future growth. I found it interesting that the 4-day summit this past week included 2 days in Beijing, which is China's political capital, and 2 days in Shanghai, which is China's economic capital. The amount of time dedicated to deepening business ties in Shanghai confirms the high level of interest on both sides. As for supply chains, China has in recent years tried to avoid U.S. tariffs by transshipping products through third countries to disguise their origin before arrival in the U.S. The Trump administration has created a special trade task force to tackle this problem in 2025, and I think we're going to see increased enforcement action in 2026. Trump administration officials are asking the governments of Korea and other trading partners to assist with this crackdown, a trend that I think is going to become increasingly prominent in 2026. China has already threatened to punish countries that cooperate with American anti-transshipment efforts, so Seoul will have to navigate this situation carefully, I think, in the future.
Then what kind of a response, Mr. Moon, do you think would be helpful for the South Korean government and the industry as well?
Well, there are long-standing laws that prohibit countries from shipping goods to intermediate countries, simply slapping a sticker on it saying that it is a product of that country and then shipping it on to the United States. So I think a lot of the enforcement is going to focus on that kind of transshipment problem. The problem gets even more complicated as you think about perhaps measuring the amount of components, say, from China before they go into the U.S., or the level of transformation that those goods undergo before they go to the U.S. That gets to changing American laws, which is a bit more difficult and a bit more complicated. But this is a very complicated issue, a deep well that has lots of legal aspects that need to be sorted out in the year to come.
Right. We'll have to keep close tabs on how that moves forward. Thank you so much for your insights, Mr. Moon.
Thank you.
And Professor Hall, we really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.